Hi, welcome back to the Power BI for Schools beginner course. This is lesson 3, calculated columns and measures, and these are the main ways that we'll be writing expressions in Power BI. Basically, the way they break down is that calculated columns are easier to understand and write, but measures are a lot more useful. So, calculated columns are essentially additions to your underlying data tables. So we've got a table here. We'd literally adding a column, and it's performing a formula on each row of the table. We can do that from here, add a new column, but it's actually, I'm going to show you on the data view. Here we go. So if I click on new column, and we're going to write an expression in DAX. DAX stands for Data Analysis Expressions, and it's very similar to Excel, especially when you're writing calculated columns. So if we say we want a column called lever equals if date of leaving, otherwise n. So this is a formula that you could type into a table in Excel. OK. And the key thing is it's obviously it's performing it for each row of the table. So we just reference a column, and it knows to do that calculation for each row. We call this row context. Okay. Now measures, in contrast, are actions that are performed on or over tables. So taking a column and aggregating it in some way with a function like sum or count. So a really simple example of that would be to count the number of rows in the students table. So let's put that into a visual. This is a card. I can drag it in here. So that's an action performed over the whole table. Measures can also reference single columns. So if we create another measure, but they can only do so within aggregation. So if we say we wanted our average key stage 2 equals, if I just type key stage 2, I get nothing, but inside of average, right there, I can select it. So there I've got the average key stage 2. So calculated columns are adding data to the underlying model, and the reason they can be problematic is they use up memory, and when you add new measures or new columns, BI performs kind of like a health check, which can involve recalculating all of the calculated columns, which is not an issue if there aren't very many of them and they're on small tables, but if they're complicated or if they're on big tables, that can really slow your report down. So you definitely don't want to have them on big tables like attendance or behaviour events, and wherever possible you want to get their information in either from the source data or in Power Query, although sometimes, as I say, for small tables it's most convenient to have them in BI. Okay, so measures. Measures always aggregate data from multiple rows of a table, so you need to put column references inside aggregations like count or sum or average. They're always working on the canvas, the front page of the report, so they're affected by the filters and slices that you have, and they are what power visuals, so they're ultimately much more useful than calculated columns. Indeed, even if you have, let's say we just pull in a visual, even if you pull a column into the value section of the visual, that's created a measure. It's sum at the moment, sum key stage 2. If we change it to average, then it will be the same as our measure that's creating of the average. One final thing about calculated columns and measures. So calculated columns, you see here, this is the one we created. They obviously belong on a specific table. Measures are sort of filed under tables, but will actually be the same regardless of what table they're on. And for that reason, what I like to do to make my reports neater and tidier is basically create a separate measure table, and on big reports sometimes more than one. So I do that by going enter data, and this is the only thing I use enter data for. It's actually rubbish for entering data. So we'll call this analysis. We'll just click load. So that's going to create a new separate table. If I then click on my measure, I can change its home table. We'll do this one as well. And then if you hide the column, we just right click and hide it and save the report. The next time you reopen the report, you can see that the little symbols change to a little calculator to show that this is a measure table, not a data table.